My grandparents' house was a retreat I enjoyed thoroughly growing up, and that never changed as I got older. Their house was nestled within the gorgeous forests of Washington and sat out on a quiet dirt road about 20 minutes away from the main town. My grandparents loved nature to the very depths of their soul, finding solace in the endless scenery around them. A while back, my grandmother had installed a couple bird feeders that had built-in cameras, just so she could view the variety of birds that landed to eat the seeds. Then my grandfather, with his unmistakable knack for craftsmanship, brought it upon himself to install a couple outdoor cell cams on the outer perimeter of the property. Throughout the time the cameras had been running, there had been plenty of deer and squirrels, more birds, an occasional raccoon, and even coyote captured in the heavily wooded surroundings. This trip was just like any other. I was out there to help around the property and enjoy the tranquility, all while spending some much-needed quality time with my grandparents. It was a familiar rhythm of work and leisure. As we relaxed on that quiet evening, my grandmother and I had just gotten back in from doing some work in the garden when my grandfather, who had just finished grilling, called us over. The sweet aroma of mountain air, pine trees, and wood smoke filled my lungs, a scent I wished I could preserve in a bottle. We sat down to our meal of barbecued chicken and grilled vegetables that had been harvested straight from my grandmother's garden. It was always undeniably one of the highlights to the day, coming together and swapping stories in the waning sunlight. But my grandfather's sudden huff caught my attention, signaling a hiccup in our peaceful evening, so I asked him what it was that was bothering him. He just shook his head and explained that he forgot that he needed to remount one of the trail cameras that had fallen over from the previous night. Due to the last pictures it took, it was clearly on the ground. My grandmother then gave me a look from under her reading glasses, her fork gently tapping in the air as she gathered her words. "You know, this isn't the first time it's happened," she chimed in. Her statement now piqued my curiosity. Was this camera just not seated properly? Could it be an animal? My grandfather then went on to explain how he installed these cameras and where they were located. To put it simply, a mounting bracket had been screwed into a post, and from there the camera snapped into place. It didn't seem too unlikely for something to cause it to fall. As we finished up, I offered to go fix it. It wasn't dark yet, and I knew I didn't have far to walk. As I approached the camera's post, sure enough, I could see it laying there on the ground off to the side. I grabbed it, dusted it off, and inspected how the camera fit into place. From what I was seeing, it didn't appear to be damaged. I snapped it back in and wiggled it around a little bit, hearing a faint click as the camera captured my movement. Great. I was about to head back when I heard a few distant knocks that made me stop, almost like a stick was being hit against a tree. Could be an animal, or maybe even the way trees tend to creak and snap when they sway. Regardless, it definitely caught my attention, but with a little more caution I retreated back to the house and filled my grandparents in. The next morning I awoke to the strong smells of coffee and gentle mumble from my grandparents' conversation. I got up, splashed some water on my face, and greeted them. They were both staring down at my grandmother's iPad. My grandfather had a hand on his hip as he shook his head and chuckled, clearly baffled by something. "Trail cam fell down again," he went on to say as he motioned me over. My grandmother then tilted the iPad in my direction as she showed me what the camera had last caught. It was a nighttime photo, partially blurry as the camera was presumably falling from its mount. However, in the distance behind the thick brush were not two, not four, but weirdly 3 very obvious orbs that looked like eyes. Two of these orbs looked like very normal reflecting animal eyes, but then there was one hovering in between them, slightly above as if making a triangle shape. I felt my stomach drop at this strange depiction, but figured maybe the image could have been distorted due to the camera falling. Needless to say, it put all of us on guard, although my grandparents seemed more excited about the find than scared. A little later, I walked back out, broad daylight, and fixed the camera again. With that eerie picture in my mind, my nerves sort of tingled. No signs of tampering that I could see, and also no signs of what could be making this camera fall. It was truly a mystery, and it made me order them a couple more cameras for added measure. During the rest of my stay, the cameras had mysteriously fallen one more time, and I began to make it a habit to kind of check around the perimeter. No evidence that I could find, and no more eerie glowing eyes. It's things like this that keep those forest legends and tales alive, gives us stories to tell, and makes you wonder what really is out there. So a little background. My partner, we'll call her Lisa, and I recently moved into a new house in a quiet neighborhood. Everything seemed to be going great, and we were excited to start this new chapter of our lives together. We decided to install a decent security system with motion-activated cameras, just for some extra peace of mind. We had these cameras on the exterior of our home, and only one on the inside looking over the living room and the entryway. Quite some time went by with no activity whatsoever. I off and on would get a notification for motion in the late hours of the night, but then debunked it for it being tree movement due to the wind, a bug, a bird, or something similar. However, one night I got a notification on my phone from the camera in the living room, and here's where it all began. Now, these cameras in particular will try to intelligently predict what the object is. For instance, a person, an animal, a vehicle, etc. At first, I thought it was a glitch or maybe trick of the light when my camera notification told me that there was a person detected in our living room. This was about 11 or so at night, and my partner and I had already shut off everything downstairs. We were both in the upstairs about to go to bed. I asked her to come over and take a look at it as we tried to determine what it could possibly be seeing. There was nothing there, nothing that we could see. No shadows or movement of any kind. Not much of anything, really. It was highlighting a practically empty piece of wall by the front door that housed a floating shelf and a painting. We sort of shrugged it off in the moment, dismissing it as a simple detection error. Maybe something about the furniture in the dark was making it go off. Jump ahead about 2 weeks, maybe a little less. The cameras had all been running fine, and there were no more strange anomalies like the one detected in our living room. I had noticed the cameras had sent a few notifications that evening, but I hadn't instantly checked on them since I wasn't thinking too much of it. Mostly it was the usual, a bug, a bird, foliage. A little later, I decided to give the events a watch when I heard another ding on my phone. As usual, nothing exciting or suspicious was caught until there it was again. Same camera, same person detected notification, but this time the box highlighting this so-called person was in a different place. It was hovering around the couches now instead of by the entry. As much as I wanted to brush it off as another error, I began to find it a little odd. It had happened twice now, both times spaced out by a good bit with no other instances in between. My rationalization for the cameras thinking something in the living room was a person began to make me wonder. If that was the case, wouldn't this event in particular be occurring more often? I didn't know what to make of it. It didn't really make us start to behave any differently about our place. Then something really unexplainable happened that threw us a curveball. Lisa came in one morning and told me that she couldn't find the car keys. It's something both of us tend to do when we're in a hurry or have a lot going on. We scramble around the house in an uncoordinated mess and end up misplacing something. I asked her where she remembered having them last, and she insisted she had last seen them on the dining room table. I hurried downstairs to help her search the dining room, along with the kitchen, the bathroom, living room, and even the car itself. No luck. And at this point, Lisa was frustratedly going to grab the truck keys when we both turned around and froze. The keys we had been so frantically searching for were right there, on the dining room table. The very empty dining room table except for a centerpiece and placemats. Lisa instantly turned to me and jokingly told me that I'm a jerk for messing with her since she was running late to an appointment. All I could do was throw my hands up and plead the fifth. I knew that she knew it wasn't me, and both of us stood there for a moment sort of dumbfounded as we shared a few confused glances. I get one of us missing it, but both of us? A few more days go by when the same notification pings an alert on my phone. Third time, and once again in the night hours. Only instead of the box hovering in the same spot as it detected this person, it briefly tracked something on the couch. At this point, I began to feel that this was becoming a little ridiculous, so I really dove into investigating what these videos were showing. I exported it to my computer in the highest quality, and from there blew it up full screen on my monitor. What I saw wasn't prominent, and only lasted for a few frames, but it definitely looked like a very faint shadow had materialized into the couch. It had no shape at all from what I was seeing, but whatever this anomaly was, it was enough to alert the camera. I almost wondered if it could be some weird pixelization from the camera's quality in infrared. But still, the camera had to have been actually seeing something in real time for it to trigger. What the heck is that? I had muttered as I squinted my eyes more at the video. My heart thudded in my chest when suddenly I heard Lisa chuckle and repeat what I had said from behind me. It snapped me out of my intense focus, but she obviously came in the room and found it humorous when she saw me there, muttering to myself with my face practically buried in the computer screen. I told her to come over and take a look at what I was seeing, but all was quiet. No movement, no footsteps, no reply. I then turned around and called her name when I didn't see her there. I got up from my chair and peered my head out of the room, calling Lisa once again. I got chills when I heard her answer from down below. She hadn't just been upstairs. The unease increased as the incidents around the house began to connect, things occasionally being out of place, knocks and thumps that Lisa and I had told ourselves was just the house settling or maybe the weather. But the one thing I can't seem to get around is the fact that both of us now have heard the other, although it wasn't actually us. Lisa had heard me call her upstairs at one point, and I had sworn I heard Lisa talking in one of the rooms when she hadn't even been home. I can't describe it, but these occurrences have been benign to say the least. I've relocated the camera out front with the other one for the time being. Haven't had a person detected notification on it since, unless it truly was someone. Lisa or myself, a guest, delivery person. This sort of just makes me feel worse about the original situation. I have no explanation for it. It doesn't appear to be a faulty camera, and things haven't intensified in any way. As much as I hate to boil it down to it being some sort of unseen presence roaming around our place, I'd at least rather not know about it through a ping on my phone. Out of sight, out of mind, I guess. In the heart of autumn, my father and I embarked on a hunting expedition. I was around 20 at the time and always a bit skeptical of the dense woods that bordered the land. My dad had secured permission for us to hunt on an untouched parcel. It was remote and nestled in the vast wilderness. As we ventured into the depths of the forest, the distant cry of unseen creatures would echo through the air. The land stretched out before us, veiled in an eerie stillness that brought a little unease to my mind. Our plan was simple: set up trail cameras to capture the elusive deer that roamed the woods. My father assigned me to the task of marking trails and scouting the property line while he arranged the trail cams in strategic locations. Being alone in the wilderness, I felt the weight of the forest pressing in on me, and almost as if something was watching my every move. Probably just my wandering mind and a little bit of anxiety. At first, I shook it off as being out in the middle of nowhere, and now I was separated from my dad. But as time ticked on, the feeling sort of increased. I radioed my father, trusting my gut that something might be amiss, but unbothered, he just told me to be careful and remain cautious of my surroundings. Despite his reassurance, the feeling of being watched lingered that day, like something unwelcome was lurking just beyond sight. When I rejoined my father, he showed me the positions of the cameras. We walked around the woods together from that point on, but I still couldn't completely shake that weird feeling. Fast forward a week or so, and we head back out to the property to check the cameras before opening day of primitive weapon season. After retrieving the photos, we find that some hogs and deer have been captured by the trail cams in a couple of areas. Having found this, we decided to set up in 2 different spots when opening day arrives. A week and a half or so later, we head out for the opening day of primitive weapon season and begin to set up in our respective areas. After about 2 hours sitting in my blind, I hear noise coming from my right, so I freeze and wait to see what's heading my way. Within 5 minutes, a man that I have never seen on the property, or anywhere else for that matter, walks straight through my line of sight and right up the path towards my father. At this point, I'm completely hit with anxiety, yet I'm staying as still as I possibly can. The man doesn't seem to notice me and continues his journey toward my dad. Once I think the man is enough out of earshot, I muster up the courage to radio my dad and tell him what I saw. He tells me not to move and that he will be there as soon as he can. I was now expecting him to meet this mystery man on the trail, and now I'm dreading the worst. To my relief, he shows up within a few minutes and tells me there was no sign of anyone walking the trail. At this point, I was pretty uneasy, so my dad tells me to pack back up. We'll get the photos from the cameras and then head out. He also tries to calm me down by telling me it was probably just a friend of the property owner who was also out hunting in the same area. Well, we get the SD cards from the trail cameras and go to view them on my dad's computer. The first few pictures contain the usual hog and deer and whatnot, but not too far into the pictures was that same guy. The same one I saw on the trail. And in the photo, he was staring right into the trail cam, almost as if he was letting us know he knew that they were there. Then it continued as we delved more into the photos. It became clear that this guy was toying with us, possibly, basically having a whole photo shoot on our trail camera. We showed the photos to the man who owned the property, and of course he has no idea who that man was. My father even went as far as turning the photos into the local authorities, but of course nothing was ever done about this crazy mystery man. You may be thinking it's just harmless pictures. Someone happened to catch a glimpse of the trail cams and thought it would be funny to let it click a couple of pictures of them, knowing somewhere someone is going to view it and get a kick out of it. But there was something off about his expressions. Have you ever taken a look at someone and just had that feeling that there's bad energy, menacing? I don't know. All I knew was that this person gave me a bunch of red flags. His demeanor seemed almost taunting, as if telling us he was out there, aware of our cameras and where we treaded.